Robbie Farmanfarmaian. I'm so excited to see the sheer number of entrepreneurs and physicians here. It's awesome, so thank you. So as he mentioned, I work on companies poised to impact a minimum of 100 million patients worldwide. I am the money girl, so a lot of the time I'm responsible for the money. I am working on 3 companies. One's Invicta Medical. We are a data-driven platform device for sleep apnea. Scott's on our advisory board, woohoo! Working on a company called Actabalon. We are curing cancer by repairing the p53 part of the human cell. When successful, we will be able to cure or treat more than 50% of all cancer out there. Right now, we're in preclinical trials. And the 3rd company is MindBase. It's a unicorn with an over $1 billion valuation. We're using virtual reality for stroke and brain injury rehabilitation. And we just got FDA approval about 2 months ago, so we'll start distributing in the United States in early 2018. Now, I'm pretty crazy, right? Like I'm saying, I'm going to make people who can't move their arms use them again by playing video games, and on the side, I'm going to cure cancer. You know that there's a backstory. So with me, at the age of 16, I was misdiagnosed with an autoimmune disease. All told, I've had 43 hospitalizations and 6 major surgeries. Now, when you're facing surgery, especially when you're a kid, right? You go from hospital system to hospital system looking for the very best doctors out there. None of my doctors ever looked at me and said, you know what, Robin? Let's hold off on these surgeries because you're so young and technology is moving so quickly. It could provide better solutions in the near future. Nobody ever said, you know what, Robin? Technology is hope. And technology is hope. In fact, had digital health IT and just the sheer amount of information we now have access to as patients existed when I was a teenager, I most likely would not have lost 3 organs. Now at the age of 26, this is 7 years after they had taken out my entire large intestine. My doctors were telling me I was cured, but I wasn't. And I was in extreme pain. So over a period of time, they kept upping and upping my opiate dose until eventually I was on 80 milligrams a day of methadone. This is a gigantic dose of opiates, and let me tell you, I absolutely hated the drug. So I went back to my pain clinic, and I said, I need off this drug now. I said, okay. Next step would be to surgically implant a morphine pump into your spine. I was like, are you kidding me? I was 26 years old. I was a shut-in. I was way too sick to even work, let alone even go to the grocery store. So I fired my entire healthcare team. Every single one of them. And I rebuilt it with healthcare professionals that worked with me as a team and a colleague. I dropped my own methadone dose by about 40%, not something I recommend because obviously I'm risking seizures at that point, but I like to catalyze it. I had got off all the opiates, ended up getting diagnosed correctly, put on a medication called Remicade, and within 24 hours of that very first IV dose, I went into remission. Literally overnight. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about, is how the convergence now of all of these different exponential technologies are not only disrupting medicine over the next 2, 5, and 10 years, but really putting the patient in the driver's seat. Now in my 60 and 90-minute keynotes, I do deep dives into each one of these areas. This time I'm just going to give you a couple to give you a really fast, high-level overview of some of the cool things going on in medicine right now. So let's switch gears and talk about what it's like to be a patient today and in the near future. Well, we're seeing a lot of point-of-care diagnostic devices. What that means is a diagnostic device comes to the patient versus the patient having to go to a traditional setting like a hospital or clinic. So, for example, take the FDA-approved $99 single-lead EKG monitor by AliveCor. And take my EKG, send the data up to the cloud, where it can be analyzed by artificial intelligence or by doctors, right? And if I do need to see a physician, I can do one on demand, virtually, right? FaceTime, Skype, even telepresent robot. In fact, virtual care is on a massive upswing worldwide, but very much so in the United States. In fact, more than 70% of routine doctor visits do not need to be done in person. So a couple of quick examples of some of the big things going on in the United States. Right now, CVS Minute Clinics. You can go in there on demand, you can see a nurse practitioner, and in some states you can see a physician's assistant. They partnered with Cleveland Clinic, one of the top hospitals in the United States. Now you go into an Alabama CVS Minute Clinic, and you can see a physician at the Cleveland Clinic virtually. Lucille Packard, of course, that's Stanford's Children's Hospital, talked with the CEO last year. He said he was pulling primary care into the hospital, and if you do need to see a specialist, You go into the hospital, sit next to your primary care physician, and see all the specialists virtually on video, right? And Kaiser Permanente, their California CEO came out last year and said by 2018, he wants more than 50% of all clinic visits done virtually. And point-of-care diagnostics, or what I like to call diagnostics on demand. We are seeing a lot going on in the world of direct-to-consumer, things like the Core Wellness Tracker. Now, this is actually a spectrometer that you have in your bathroom. They did a crowdfunding campaign. This is direct-to-consumer. This is not going through FDA in terms of like being the equivalent of a CLIA-certified lab, but it's good enough for some patients, right? So have a spectrometer in your bathroom so you can do things like inflammatory markers, blood glucose fasting, and cholesterol. Everlywell, this is a mail-order laboratory, direct-to-consumer. They just did a few $1 million in funding. So as a consumer, this does not go through insurance. This does not go through your physician. I go online, I order a bunch of different tests that I want, a couple $100 each test. I can order all of the STDs. I can even order thyroid exams, tests. And comes in the mail, I collect my own blood, send it back through the mail, and they do use CLIA-certified laboratories to give you your results. We're also seeing a lot going on in the world of apps. BrainCheck launched earlier this year. This is for early detection of concussion and dementia. Now this is a big deal because none of us go to a neurologist to get a baseline on our brain health, right? We go to a neurologist once it starts impeding our lifestyle. But that's typically too late for pharmaceutical intervention when you are talking about dementia. Well, the cool thing about BrainCheck is they took the standard neurological exams, gamified them, electronified them, and deliver them to patients in a freemium app model. It means you get a free version and you can have a subscription model. And you can do a baseline on your brain health, right? It takes 5 or 10 minutes and it's fun. Now everything on this slide is FDA approved and accessible to consumers. Stethoscopes and ear monitoring that plugs into your smartphone. You monitor, let's say, your kids' ears, and if you do need to see a physician, you can do one right there on demand via the app, via video. Pretty cool, right? And Philips Lumify, interesting, this is super interesting. This is a subscription model ultrasound machine. It plugs into your smartphone, and say you're pregnant, right, or something like that, and you want an ultrasound for 3 months in your house, you can do it for $300 a month. And this is my living room. I have hacked my healthcare to get the vast majority of it in my apartment or within a 2-block radius. Here I am getting Remicade. I've been on it now for 18 years, which is a huge success. Woohoo! For the first 16 years, I did it in a hospital. It took me 7 to 8 days to recover because of the infusion clinic. You go in there are no windows. There's constant noise, infectious diseases, other patients, other doctors. It was actually traumatic, and I didn't realize that. So I'd spend 6 hours getting my IV steroids and IV Remicade, and I'd feel pretty sick at the end of it. I'd go home and I'd be knocked out for 7 or 8 days. Moved it into my house, not only did my copay drop in half, it used to cost about $28,000 for my insurance company, now it costs $10,000. My copay is now below $700 or $600, it used to be above $1,000, and this is 8 times a year, by the way, so this is a significant difference. Guess what? I had my Remicade on Monday, and I'm here giving a keynote. This is a massive game changer in my world. Purely, the only change was pulling this medication into my home, and I'm totally functional this week. Normally, I would not have been. I also do direct-to-consumer IV saline solution, right? Previously, there's one company here in the Bay Area, and actually they are in a bunch of different cities in the United States, called IVDoc. This is direct-to-consumer IV saline solution, vitamins, and over-the-counter medications like anti-nauseas. This does not go through insurance. This does not go through your physician. You go on the app, you order a nurse on demand. They come to your house. For $220, I get a liter of saline solution. Now, for someone like me, I have Crohn's disease and a J pouch and no large intestine. It's pretty hard for me to stay hydrated. I used to have to go to the ER 2 to 3 times a year just to get a liter of IV saline solution. What a horrific waste of resources, right? And my copay is probably going to be as much as I do now with IVDoc. But with IVDoc, it takes about 20 minutes in my apartment, and I do it same day. And now I do not ever need to go to the emergency room. I also do in-home primary care with a company called Circle Medical. They send a physician to my house for 60 minutes for a copay of $20. In fact, right now we are entering a perfect storm of technological advancements, really enabling in what I like to call the era of the patient. So as I mentioned, I do deep dives into each one of these areas. I'm just going to give you a really fast overview of a couple of sections, starting out with software hardware, which is virtual and augmented reality. Now, without AI, VR would not exist. So you're talking about artificial intelligence, that is what is powering virtual and augmented reality. State of the industry right now. Easy to understand. We can use VR and AR for entertainment, gaming, recreational experiences. You want to jump off the Great Wall of China, may as well do it by VR. Quick. Raise your hands in the room. How many people have used high-end VR in their life? A couple people. How about augmented reality? Things like Pokemon Go and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so we've got a bunch of people who haven't, and what about the low-end stuff? Google, Cardboard, and stuff? Okay, so you guys need to go out there and try real virtual reality. I'm telling you, it's going to change your opinion on things. The other things we're seeing in the world of VR that we've been doing for a few years now, military training, disaster response training, and even surgical training now for a few years. But over the next 12 to 18 months, it's going to explode in things like meetings and education, architecture, interior design, test driving your cars, and even trying on clothes. But VR in medicine is where I get really excited. So right here I'm trying a company called Deepstream. It's based out of Stanford, and what they're doing is VR for pain management, and it works. Their systems cost a little over $3,000 last I talked to them, and they're distributing through pain clinics. And it is so immersive that it does turn off my pain better than when I used to take oxycodone and methadone. Of course, my phase where I'm working, we're doing a $200 million raise over the next year and a half. And we are working, as I said, on stroke and brain injury rehabilitation. We're already in 50 clinics in Europe and in India. Now, our next verticals are autism and Parkinson's. But I'm seeing other companies in the world of VR doing things like PTSD, depression, and even phobias. Say you're scared of heights or scared of spiders, you can retrain your brain using virtual reality. And virtual and augmented reality are going social. Now what I mean by that is the Twitters, the LinkedIns, the Facebook, the Snapchats, but all in the world of virtual reality. There are already 6 to 7 major platforms out there. This one is High Fidelity by the same founder as Second Life, if you ever played that game. But this is going to explode. And right now, Facebook Spaces launched just a couple of months ago. This is their version of the world of VR. All right, so factors to consider in virtual reality. Why am I telling you about some of the other parts outside of medicine? It's because it's becoming democratized. The faster it spreads to the consumer world, the faster it's going to get through medicine. And it's going to be democratized in the next 12 to 18 months. The vast majority of us, at least here in the United States, are going to be using augmented reality in some way. Past couple of years, we've had over $2.5 billion invested, and this is mainstream VCs, by the way. These are not niche VCs. I've seen different consulting companies priced to the market, between $1 and $10 billion, but they're all in agreement that by 2020, 3 years away, it's going to be between 120 and over $200 billion market. That is massive, unprecedented growth, right? So I already told you one is Facebook Spaces launching is going to help democratize this just because the sheer number of users on Facebook. And we're starting to see web augmented reality, meaning you can access it through your laptop. But of course, Apple. Apple is the other main company that is going to propel this to democratization, meaning everyone's going to have access to it. Because their 10-year anniversary iPhone is coming out in the next couple of months, and it's going to have a very heavy AR focus. All right, so let's just do a short little dive into the world of sensors, just to kind of show you where that state is. You know the phrase, the Internet of Things. Well, I'm thinking about an Internet of You. In fact, right now, we are experiencing a paradigm shift where everything is going digital. And remote monitoring in the world of medicine is on a massive upswing. Sleep therapy monitoring alone grew by 70% last year. We're expected to have over 50 million patients remotely monitored over the next 4 years. The really cool thing about technology is it makes things seamless. We're not going to see these clunky Fitbits and watches, right, all the time. We're going to have much more way of seamlessly collecting it, aggregating it, and then putting it in a beautiful patient dashboard. I am guessing that Apple is going to be that dashboard. We need the iTunes of healthcare, and it's most likely going to be Apple when it comes to aggregating all of this data and being able to give you good insights. And as Louis was mentioning earlier, this is going to be heavily propelled by AI. But we're seeing lots going on in the world of the clinical space. So Siren Care, this is not on the market yet. What they are doing is temperature gauging socks. These are for diabetics to catch foot ulcers early before they get advanced enough that you worry about amputation. Can you imagine for a $7 pair of socks that you could throw in the washing machine, you potentially don't lose your leg to amputation? Pretty big deal. HealthWatch is a company out of Israel. They have FDA approval. This is a 12 to 15 lead EKG monitoring compression shirt being used in the ICU. This is clinical grade. And you can send your patient home with that same shirt on. So you can remotely monitor them with a 15 lead EKG monitoring shirt, right, while they are at home. We're starting to see a lot going on in the world of epidermal and subcutaneous. Epidermal is like a temporary tattoo. Subcutaneous means under the skin. This particular one, that is a company called MC10, partnered with L'Oreal Cosmetics, who happens to be putting a lot of funding into sensor development and tissue engineering. This one's on the market. It measures UV radiation. Verily, of course, is out of Google. They are trying to work on blood glucose monitoring contact lenses. Sensimed already has FDA approval. You put the contact lens in for 24 hours and it monitors glaucoma progression. And diabetes is getting very simplified. Both Abbott and Dexcom have FDA approval in the past couple of years, and this is essentially a temporary tattoo that sits on your body, has a filament that sits right under the skin and measures glucose in interstitial fluid. Omron, over the next, it's supposed to have come out by now, so hopefully in the next month or two, they are going to have FDA approval for the world's first blood pressure monitoring watch. They're hoping their price point can be around $200. And we're starting to see an entirely new category called ingestibles. Of course, this is a big deal in my world, the pill cam. This is a colonoscopy without the anesthesia and without the equipment. Patient does a normal bowel prep, go into the doctor's office, swallows the pill, puts on a belt, goes home for 24 hours. The belt collects all the photos that the pill takes. Patient goes back to the doctor's office the next day, returns the belt, fortunately not the pill, and they have just done their colonoscopy without anesthesia and without the risk, right? Out of MIT, they're working on something called a vital sign pill. So literally you just swallow a pill and it will record your vital signs for 24 hours. Not on the market yet. PillCam is on the market. And Proteus, how many people in the room have heard of Proteus? Okay, quite a few. So this is a sensor that fits on medication. They have FDA approval for compounding medications, which means when you take it for an individual patient, you can put it on a dose specific. They are trying to get FDA approval for a drug called Abilify, which is the second largest grossing drug to date, and it's for schizophrenia. And this is fantastic technology for things like schizophrenia, bipolar, dementia, Alzheimer's, where patients either forget to take their medication or they're resistant to it, right? And it's really cool technology. But all of this technology is really raising the bar on the interaction between the patient and the physician. So if you think back to the title of my talk, the patient as the CEO. And just like the CEO of a corporation, I'm not telling patients that they are healthcare professionals by any means. I'm telling patients to behave like CEOs of corporations. You're not an expert in marketing, engineering, finance, legal, right? You're an expert in the global view of the company. So you hire the best experts to run all those departments. They do their jobs, report back to you, and together, as a team, you decide on the direction for a company to go into. But as CEO, you are the one who is ultimately responsible that the vision is carried out and that the company overall is successful. So I ask you, why should being a patient be any different? But I do understand that not every patient is as quite driven and type A personality as I am, to give an understatement. So what I'm seeing is a lot of health and life coaching popping up. Now, this is what I call the COO of a healthcare team. They do not need to be a healthcare professional. What they need to be is a problem solver so that they understand and can help patients integrate and execute on treatment plans, because that is, of course, a very big part of receiving healthcare. All right, so I want to leave you with this thought. Most of us in this room, we work in healthcare, but I want to remind you that 100% of us at some point in our lives are patients. So now that you're the CEO of your own healthcare team, how are you going to start to change your behavior today? Thank you. Oh, I do questions. You guys have any questions? I think I scared everyone too much. Yes?
It's a very inspiring presentation, Robin.
Thank you.
I'm curious as to how you selected these 3 companies to be part of.
Oh, because I have 3 very specific metrics. They need to use cutting-edge technology. They need to be poised to impact a minimum of 100 million patients. Now that's a huge market size, and so they need to be addressing one of the biggest types of diseases. Like, for instance, I am also an angel investor, and I invest in things like cancer and vaccines and herpes and things like that with gigantic markets. But then they also need to provide incremental life extension. And by that I mean I want to make sure that each one of the companies I work for can add 10 to 20 good, productive years to people's human lives. And being a professional speaker and author, the main reason I became a professional speaker is that so I can find these kinds of companies. My funnel is huge, and I get at least 1 to 2 companies ping me every single day. Right? And that way I can also do all the high-level biz dev and provide the funding for these companies. Any other questions?
Thanks for a great patient CEO.
Thank you.
How does data play a role in the patient as a CEO?
Oh, absolutely. So I talk about that a lot, well, especially because the sensor section, right? That's all collecting massive amounts of data. Now, as patients, we want access to our data. We want to be the ones who either own it or we have control over it, but we really don't want to see every single number. We want to see the action items, right? And so that's why the dashboard with insights and artificial intelligence is so incredibly important, because if you as a physician or an entrepreneur is overwhelmed by the sheer amount of wearable tech data and all the other data coming out of there, can you imagine what someone who's sick and tired and not feeling well on a daily basis, if they, it's hard enough just to look at lab results, right? So we want the insights. We want to know it's there, and we want the insights in it.
Have you seen any trends or platforms that help patients navigate through all this jumble of technology and kind of help them choose what's right for them?
So that's where like the life and the health coaching comes in. And so it's very early in that. I'm seeing, I consult occasionally for like hospitals in Europe as well. And in Holland, they are actually creating entire departments around health coaching. So because they understand, it used to be the primary care doctor that would be able to manage everything, but in 8 to 15 minutes, how many primary care doctors can manage an entire patient's life? You can't, right? And so some people in healthcare, and especially entrepreneurs, because I'm not seeing the big hospital systems in the United States doing this, I see the entrepreneurs creating these coaching companies to really help patients navigate and do research, navigate the technology, navigate the solutions, and do research around what they could possibly use.
Have you seen any concern about like a lot of false alarms with these like wearables and like, because now it's like rather than having this like discrete checkpoints, it's like continuous monitoring of your health. Have you seen any concern from that?
So it depends on what you're talking about. So the consumer grade wearables, the Fitbits and things like that, extremely inaccurate. They're enough to give you a trending analysis, but they are not accurate enough for the most part to make kind of medical decisions unless you're just seeing something, a trend, as I said. But the ones that are FDA approved, these are FDA approved. These are things that physicians would use, right? So you need to be able to trust them. So those are the ones I do trust. And I use the other ones as, entertainment value only.
I mentioned earlier I'm a speech pathologist, and so when you brought up non-maze and stroke and TBI rehab, it's very close to my heart. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about how that's going. You said in India and the UK. Is that
Sure. So we're based out of Lucerne, Switzerland. I'm one of the first employees here in the United States. Because we just got FDA approval. So the company was founded in 2012. It's based on about 10 years of research. And so we've been in the hospital for a little over a year now, and we have incredible patient data. On efficacy has gone up. Do you guys know how VR and like stroke rehab works? You want me to explain that in the next 2 minutes? Okay. So what happens is, say your left arm is paralyzed from the stroke. What we do is in the world of VR is we take your right arm, you move that, and we mirror image it over your left arm. It is enough to trick the brain into thinking that you are moving the left arm. And so over a period of time, this actually increases the efficacy and recovery. Not only that, but it's fun because it's gamified, so we have gamers on staff specifically working with this. And that's the really cool thing about these consumer companies is that you can use gamers. The other thing we've done is, amputation, phantom pain. This is really cool. We turn that off with one session. One session, phantom pain. It's incredible. It's very, very powerful.
So how do you do that? What is the mechanism?
So again, we're just showing the patient in the world of VR, we're showing them that they have an arm again, and just showing them that they have an arm in VR is enough to train the brain to turn off that pain.
So it's like psychological.
Yeah, I mean, well, no, but not psychological necessarily. I mean, we are really remapping the brain, right?
Robin, you mentioned that you predicted Apple would be at the forefront of collecting everything on the dashboard.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the other two incumbents, specifically Microsoft and Amazon, and where would they fit in your?
They're way behind. They're way behind. And the developers I talk to, and even coming out of companies like MindMaze, I'm hearing the AR Health Kit out of Apple is extraordinary. Like people are actually saying this is fun to work with, this is easy to work with, and they've got early engagement. I don't think that Amazon and Microsoft at this point, with the data I have, can overtake Apple. And Apple is really they understand being the platform, like look how they democratized the music industry, right? For years, they were the very first platform with iTunes, in general, like across all industries, and super successful at that. But they were running head start. And Microsoft tried with HealthFelt, remember HealthFelt?
Right.
Yeah, but that really tanked. So I think they're starting from scratch, but I do think Apple's going to win.
Thanks.
No?
I'm curious to know your views. Actually, Dexcom has a sensor, a diabetic sensor.
Yep.
In US, it costs about $5,000 to $6,000 per patient per year. And Abbott is right now is in Europe, and they submitted like FDA, their.
They have FDA now, I thought.
4 Pros. They have like 2 sensors. One is for consumer version and one is for Pro. Pro got last September 2016, but for that patient need to go to physician and then he will apply the sensor and it's for 2 weeks.
Okay,
But for consumer version, they are expecting in next 1 or 2 months.
okay.
So that will be in that competition with the Dexcom. And
Oh, they're gonna
Dexcom
win.
Yeah.
So they're totally going to win. Abbott will win. Because Dexcom is not factory calibrated. You actually have to prick your finger every single day to calibrate it, and Abbott's comes calibrated.
Yes, so we made a device actually which converts. So Abbott sensor is like fresh glucose monitor, and we made a device which converts that fresh glucose monitor into CGM just like Dexcom. And
Nice.
we are like selling in Europe, and people love that product.
Nice. Are you going to come here?
Yes.
Awesome. It's amazing. I mean, diabetes, such a huge market. We need more than one player. So I'm very happy you're doing that.
Because
Thank you.
Abbott is very cost effective, like $1,500 per year per patient. And
Nice.
Dexcom is $5,000 to $6,000.
Okay.
And our device costs like less than $100. So it would be like.
So you can do also a lot of the developing world, right? You can distribute economies of scale, you can mass this, yeah. Oh, that's exciting. Thank you. You have any more questions?
One last question.
Sure.
How many hours of sleep do you get?
7